Hello and welcome to Crucible of Words for more dedicated legacy action. It's our first midweek meta deck of the new format with Grief Band, so of course we are playing Blue-Black RE-FROG-INATOR. Yep, it's what's happened again, although we've got rid of the scam part at least, so there is something. This is a deck that Maxtortion took to win a legacy challenge this weekend, and it looks very familiar, doesn't it? So we've got ourselves the Entomb, Reanimate, Animate Dead package with our Archon of Cruelty and Atraxa. We've got the Troll of Khazad-dum that we can cycle in just as a free way of getting some stuff in to Reanimate and Animate Dead. We've got the counter magic you expect to see. We've got the cantrips you expect to see. And we've got the Psychic Frog, which kind of holds the whole thing together. This is just a backup plan if our graveyard doesn't work. It helps put these cards in a bin. It draws you cards. It does it all. It's the Swiss Army knife of winning games of Magic the Gathering. So what this deck has had to do is accommodate the loss of grief. So what it's gone for is adding in 2 Thoughtseizes to disrupt your opponent's hand. And then a couple of Tamiyos is just another good way of winning the game and pulling ahead. And then a couple of Fatal Pushes. So like some of these amount of cards were already in the deck. You know, sometimes you'd have to see 2 Brazen Borrowers. Sometimes you would see the pushes. I did see a few Tamiyos before the bans. So it's kind of just digging into the tools it already had. And because the card list is so deep for this archetype, you could just play some other cards that are still top tier legacy cards instead of the grief. So yeah, that's what we're doing today, because this won the challenge, and I'm curious to see how it plays out now. There's been a lot of decks making the 5-0s in the leagues that look a lot like this. This deck's only got 3 Wasteland here. We still do have the full 4 Seas, 2 Sewers, and then 1 of each basic, so we can always go and fetch our basics and be comfortable. And yeah, that's pretty much it for the main deck. Sideboard-wise, we've got some anti-Eldrazi tech in the Consign to Memory, which has been very impressive. Also good against Carnforge and friends. Orcish Bowmaster, we can use this for a bunch of blue decks. Just a good card. Can also pick off X1s in like the Cradle Control style decks. Bit more removal when we need that. Fatal Push. You'll notice this is a removal spell that kills Psychic Frog. Toxic Deluge. This is a card that gets to blow up all of the Ocelot Pride tokens that people are making. And there's a fair bit of that running around at the moment, as well as just being good against Cradle Control. An alternative threat in Barrowgoyf. This is another thing that when it deals combat damage, it kind of draws you a card quite often. Although not that often with our decks, we don't have that many creatures, but it's possible. But yeah, just another threat that we can board in. If we need to board high on threats, we can just go really for it there. And a couple of Brazen Borrowers as catch-all and a Force of Negation to stop some combo decks or whatever that's going to be playing some opponents we need to make sure don't hit the battlefield. Kind of the Great Creator and all that sort of jazz. And that's it. That's the deck. Won a challenge. Still looks great. Still looks like it might be the best deck in the format. Not really a surprise, given we only have 1 banning. But let's see how it fares. This is some important Magic the Gathering here, because knowing what the format is going to look like is really key, and seeing how effective the banning was is definitely an important part of how we progress moving forward. Alright, please like and subscribe. I took a bit of a hit where we were stuck with a lame duck format with grief in it, so I need to get my views and subs back up a bit more, because I'm not doing the best after last month in terms of content and views. So if you would like to share this to anyone you know who likes a bit of legacy, that would be wonderful as well. Alright, plug over and done with. Let's play some Blue-Black Reanimator. We're on the play to begin with. We've got a Force of Will we can fire off. We can do Troll into Reanimate, into Psychic Frog. This all seems just like the bad old days. So Wasteland is a relevant card against us, but we can go and cycle this Troll. There is an argument for playing around a potential Stifle here by doing the Troll earlier. Right, a Noble Hierarch. So this is going to be a Nadu list or a Cradle list, like Cradle Control style list. That's my general impression. It could be Infect though. I haven't seen that much Infect lately, but it's certainly possible. I think we just go and get ourselves an Underground Sea here. Because we're already playing on 1 non-basics, it's best to get more non-basics at that point. Okay, I guess we just win the game in a really gross fashion, right? That's what this does. Let's just Entomb. I think we get the Archon of Cruelty, so we get to sweep up this Noble Hierarch as well. Got the Force of Will in case they have an Endurance. Alright. Legolas has quick reflexes. That makes me think our opponent is on Infect, which is going to be very hard to push through an Archon of Cruelty. There's the Inkmoth Nexus. So they can block and try and deal with this. I will not play this out just yet. We'll see what we draw. We might get Surveil Land that we might want to have something useful with, but we're just absolutely sitting pretty here. We don't really need to do very much. I will add a Psychic Frog just in case we need a blocker of some description. I could play the Tamiyo as well, actually, and just have many, many blockers. That way we are not getting got by a big Infect kill this turn. We've got the Force of Will, which can help against pump spells. They are animating the Inkmoth Nexus by tapping it itself. So they're going to... Legolas has quick reflexes on this. Sure. This means that they get, when they pump it, they get to shoot our guys down. And invigorate. We hit the invigorate first. The reason for this being is it turns off Berserk and stuff like that. Yeah, so our hand was just absolutely busted. And that's how it went. Alright, this kills Infect guys. This kills Infect guys. Do I want a Toxic Deluge? It's playable here, for sure. Borrower, less so, but still has some merit. Force of Negation works here because they are trying to do stuff on their turn. So these are the cards I'm interested in, option-wise. I think we are probably trimming down on some of our Reanimate stuff. We want to keep the Reanimates and stuff in because we don't care about our life total at all in this matchup, which is a nice place to be. The Daze is relatively handy here. How do I feel about the Thoughtseize? It's fine. It can certainly collapse some of the plans our opponent has. But is that better than just having the removal for their guys? I'd rather just approach this as let's just kill all of their things. And we've got a few counter spells to hold the line. Tamiyo blocks well and generates a decent amount of card advantage. Do we need an Atraxa here? Atraxa is not really as good as Archon of Cruelty in this matchup, although finding a bunch of stuff is still fine. But just being able to strip away their bits and pieces sounds good. Alright, I think I will get rid of a Borrower here. And then on the draw, we'll take out one of these Dazes. So the plan is blow up all their guys and then win the game. I'm imagining they're going to have some amount of graveyard hate. Could be things like Grafdigger's Cage alongside some Surgicals or a Bajuka Bog if they've gone for the crop rotation line. So our opening hand is kind of clunky because the Entomb and the Force of Will don't do anything. Orcish Bowmasters is quite a handy card in this matchup. But is this good enough for me to want to keep this? I think we can do better with these two dead cards. Like, yes, we can draw lots of stuff to make them good, but... Alright, this is similar but worse. I think we're going to mulligan again. Well, well, well. I'm not particularly happy about this one. So, we're going to keep on this because we kind of have to. So, what is the plan? We can just have a bunch of counter spells and play defensive. And then just get a couple of Surveil lands and try and work our way into the game that way. I think that's acceptable. Not feeling great about this. Our opponent's definitely going to be overloading our interaction. Okay. Don't care about the Hierarch. Alright, we're going to save our Wastelands for Inkmoth Nexus. Play this out and get an Undercity Sewers. Our opponent's deck does not really interact with our mana base. They might have one or two Wastelands potentially, and that's about it. They can't play anything like Harbinger of the Seas because they require their Inkmoth Nexus to actually work. Because they're quite light on threats. Sylvan Library. I do not want that to happen. Let's get rid of that using our Force of Negation here. Brainstorm. So, the reason why we pitched the Daze there is our opponent is holding up a Hierarch, and they're going to play around Daze because it's more or less free for them to do so for a while. Even though if they responded, then we could try and Daze back. But Force of Will is just going to be more useful if we draw any blue card. I wouldn't fault someone for keeping the Daze there, but the Daze might not ever do anything, whereas the Force of Will has an opportunity to actually do something. Oh, we do not want this land. So we can get rid of this Inkmoth Nexus now as well. We want to do it now because our opponent has things like Legolas's quick reflexes. We don't want them to just be able to protect their creature. Fighting over it on your turn tends to be the best thing to do. A Grafdigger's Cage. Sure, that shuts off this Reanimate in our hand, but maybe we'll draw some of these Brainstorms that are in our deck. They're going to crash for 2 with a Hierarch. No, not crashing. That is intriguing. What are they holding up that mana for? Crop rotation, perhaps? Well, of course I would draw the Entomb now. So we're probably on Surveil Land. We could Entomb to try and just get a bad card out of our deck, but I think it's better to hold it for Brainstorm purposes. A Blighted Agent. 1 card left in our opponent's hand, but they've got a lot of pump on board. Let's get some more Surveil action on the go. Get in the bin. We are drawing quite a lot of blanks right now. An Orcish Bowmasters. So we can't fire this off right now because of the Pendlehaven being up. We could take out a Noble Hierarch because they can't save that with the Pendlehaven. Do we think this Bowmaster is ever going to get a shot at hitting this Blighted Agent? I've probably got 1 card in hand. Maybe we do get to do that. Alright, so they're playing extra cautiously here. Ooh, no, they're not. Alright, we're going to do the thing we have and hope it works. We've got 2 cards in hand. Any sort of Invigorate is going to be pretty busted here. Alright. Wow, that actually worked. I played Infect last week, I think it was on the channel, and I didn't have a great time with it. I thought it was, it was fine, but it did feel like we were playing a deck from a different era. Having lots of X1 creatures doesn't feel the most spectacular. So I can play the Psychic Frog, or I can attempt to hold this Force of Will in hand. This is unblockable, so I think I'm just going to swing. 1, 2, 3, 4. So he can't kill us with the Berserk anyway. I think we're just going to get the Frog down. It gives us way more resources every turn this game goes on. We just need to find that Brainstorm to get rid of some of this chaff. We can obviously just pitch it to the Frog. Another Noble Hierarch. If they have a Berserk in hand, they do get to win the game here. But they usually run 2 Berserk in their deck. Alright, just 4 poison counters. An Underground Sea. I would very much like to fly here to guarantee the hit. I think guaranteeing the hit is better than taking a Noble Hierarch off the board. It's close, though. We just grow the Frog here. Another Entomb. Not the one we were hoping for. So we are very much shields down to our opponent this turn. We're going to keep these cards in hand because we might just be trying to pitch a load of stuff into a Frog next turn. Another Hierarch. That is lethal, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, plus the Pendlehaven. But we have mana up, so they might not go for it. They're going to leave us at 1 poison. Or 9 poison, so there's only 1 more to hit to kill us. Playing around the Orcish Bowmasters they saw before. Toxic Deluge could be pretty good here. A Fatal Push. Our opponent has 1 card in hand. Alright, we're going to jump the Frog. So we can try and find a blue card for this Force of Will. Our opponent's got 1 card in hand. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we definitely can't kill our opponent this turn. So our opponent does anything, then we know that they don't have a card in hand. And this Fatal Push is fine. But I'd like to get the card draw from this. We don't need to pump any more because we'll be able to just pump a load next turn. This makes our Brainstorm slightly better. If our opponent does any blocking, we can obviously change the situation up and pitch a card to make sure. So we'll be doing 5 damage here, which will put our opponent to 7. So this is 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we will have lethal. I think, no, if we pitch 1 more, because if we have to use this Force, then that doesn't work out the best for us, does it? So we do this to get 1 extra damage in. Another Entomb. Okay. So our opponent has 1 card in hand. They could have hardcast Force of Will. We can't really beat that. So we are just fatal pushing this guy and hoping it sticks. Fluster Storm. Yeah, if we'd have played our land out, we could have paid for this. But I was holding it for the purpose of the Frog. Alright. I like how I've sideboarded here. Do I want Dazes on the play? Do I want Thoughtseizes on the play? I think collapsing our opponent's hand with a Thoughtseize does look very good. I wouldn't mind being able to fit these Dazes in though. Where would they go? We could trim on some of our graveyard stuff. Like bin off an Entomb. Bin off a couple of Entombs. And maybe a Reanimate. Let's try that. Like we could board in the Borrower to try and bounce the cage, but I don't think that's where I want to be. We've got actual removal that's in that sort of operational slot in our deck. If we start taking away other slots to make room for it, then it's not going to work out the best. We have a Fatal Push. We have a Daze. Entomb could be real stinky. We have the Undercity Sewers, which is fine. There's a lot of land. Maybe we'll find one of these elusive Brainstorms that I've heard so much about. We have 2 pieces of interaction. I'm going to take that. And we might get to recycle our Undercity Sewers here. A Troll of Khazad-dum. That may as well be in the graveyard if we'd just be cycling anyway. I'd rather try and draw into a Brainstorm to fix our hand up. We're going to see a 1-drop. No 1-drop. A Reanimate. We can't really play around an opposing Flusterstorm. We can beat Daze, we can't beat the Fluster. Right. I'm going to just hold this up. Because if we can just do our Entomb Reanimate plan, we will just win the game off of the back of that quite easily, I would imagine. But we need to get our opponent to try and tap down a little bit. Just an Inkmoth Nexus. Nothing there from our opponent. Alright, let's Entomb. Right, let's getting the Force. Pitching a Blighted Agent. No point dazing this. That's fine. We still have a Troll in there that we can reanimate, which is not nothing. Let's get another Undercity Sewers, get a little bit more selection. Another Reanimate. I think that's what I'm after here. A Force of Negation. I think we're going to be playing around some soft permission here. So let's get this Troll of Khazad-dum in. Right, our opponent is up to something over there. It's a Flusterstorm. It's a Daze. I'll pay for this. And now there is the Fluster. Alright, the Reanimate has succeeded. But that's a lot of our opponent's tools to do so. A Brainstorm from our opponent. Wouldn't mind one of those of our very own, but we'll see. We got 2 for 1 with that Reanimate, and we got 2 for 1 with our Entomb. So we are ahead on resources. Even if it doesn't necessarily feel like it. I'd like to Daze and pick up one of these Undercity Sewers. Alright, Tamiyo is a perfectly serviceable card here. I will play out my island, because that gives us hard cast Force of Negation and a Daze, which is a lot of interaction. And this Tamiyo can hopefully just take us all the way. Oh, this is an excellent draw. Let's see what our opponent's working with. A Veil of Summer. If I counterspell this with a Force of Negation, that's probably going to be quite good here. Let's have a look. Just a quick reflex is all they have. Okay. Excellent. That means we know our removal spell is going to be good when the time comes. So they can get 2 poison in us next turn, but that's fine. We don't care about poison until it's lethal, really. So we're going to see the Miracling Triumph of St. Catherine. I'll be honest, that was a bit of a shocker. Haven't seen any white mana yet, but the Windswept Heath is maybe a giveaway. So we don't get to Daze this. Yeah, that's pretty good. That's a pretty good draw. I mean, the Nexus are going to get in for 1 Infect. I think this kind of sums up where Infect is in my mind at the moment, where the thing I'm most scared about our opponent's deck is their pivot plan rather than their actual Infect plan. Psychic Frog, you are better than Triumph of St. Catherine, aren't you? So we take a hit, but then we can start growing our frog. And that should be able to outclass what our opponent's doing, in theory. Pendelhaven, yep, we knew that was there. Sure, Ingwald Nexus comes in. I honestly don't care about the Ingwald Nexus here. I think we're just going to take this hit. They can add 1 damage on with this Pendelhaven if they want to. But I just want to draw extra cards here so that our frog can be bigger than the Triumph. As soon as this becomes a 5-6, it should be lights out. Deluge, you say? 1, 2, 3, 4. So we could pop this and make our Psychic Frog big enough to live. I think we go to attacks first with just our Tamiyo. I'd very much like to see what we're drawing here. A Flooded Strand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we could crack this. So we play this out. 1, 2, 3, 4. So this would be a 5-6 if we pump into it and hold up Fatal Push. And we draw this. I think we're going to transform Tamiyo here. So this shrinks their guys. So we pitch 1, 2, 3, 4 cards, and this makes this a 5-6. If we play out a land, then we don't get to pitch all the cards here. What are we sitting on is the question. If we want to have a Fatal Push, then we need to play the push out. The Wasteland is kind of the same as the push in this particular board state. I think I'm going to play this Wasteland out. So they can gain a lot of life with this Triumph. But eventually we'll draw our whole library, or half our library with Tamiyo. Our friend's got 1 card in hand. A Swords, 2 Plowshares. Oh, that is a real kick, isn't it? Yeah, that is a pain for sure. Because now this comes in and kills a Tamiyo. Yeah. It's basically, our opponent playing blue-white control is better than playing Infect, weirdly. That's the card that's actually mattering here. So these Infect guys don't do anything because of the Tamiyo trigger. But we don't get to keep our Tamiyo alive here because the Triumph is going to hit it for 4. If they pump, we Wasteland. Oh, that was a horrible set of rips for our opponent. The Triumph straight into the plow. Yikes. Am I doing anything with this Fatal Push right now? Or this Wasteland? Well, we can Wasteland whenever. We may as well see what we're drawing. A Daze. Well, we can kill this Triumph, which is kind of the problem card. But then what is the next question? Alright. 1, 2, 3. Let's get rid of this Triumph. Yes, you can shuffle in your Triumph. Am I playing around a Daze our opponent draws here? I think so. I just want to have these cards put by a Brainstorm. There are Brainstorms in our deck. I'm sure of it. That is our opponent's Brainstorm. So this could set up a Triumph of St. Catherine for next turn. Or they could just draw it and hardcast it now. If they do that, I would absolutely love it. There's an Ingwald Nexus. There's another one. In come the attacks. So now I want to Wasteland our opponent's white source so they can't play the Triumph, because that's what I'm more scared of. Oh, a Ponder. Finally, some cantrip action. I do like this Force of Will for later. But how much do I like it? think we put the Force on top, and then obviously we're drawing the Frog and casting the Frog. The best thing we can do. So we play the Frog. We Wasteland them off white so they can't Miracle the Triumph. And am I playing another land? I do not believe I am playing another land here. We just want to have a nice Psychic Frog time. Yep, our opponent paused in their draw step there. I'm pretty sure the Triumph is now in their hand. You firing up that Inkmoth Nexus? So how does this go badly for us is the question. I believe they have one spell in hand and an Impenetrable Haven. If they cast a spell, we can double Daze, and this is fine. I'm going to exile some cards and jump the Frog. Our opponent has to operate first here because our creature is currently bigger. Just got to land. Legolas's Quick Reflexes. That's not one we get to counterspell, is it? So they tap and they take 2 counters off our Psychic Frog. So now if we discard all of these, we get to kill the Inkmoth, and they just have 1 mana up. It does mean that Force of Will isn't the thing we get to sit on anymore. Actually, there's a land underneath it, right? So if we attack with this for 1, we draw the land, we play the land, we leave up Hardcast Force of Will. Our opponent will know that we have Hardcast Force of Will, because it's incredibly telegraphed playing this out instead of holding it for the Frog. But yeah, Psychic Frog wins all combats. That's the general rule. A Blighted Agent. Just going to get an Underground Sea, because that's the only option we have. Say no to Blighted Agent. And now we start drawing 2 cards a turn where our opponent doesn't. Could pitch that for 1 extra damage. But I'll hold it for Brainstorm purposes, I think. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we'd have to draw like all of our lands to cast this. Yep, our opponent's just had enough. Yeah, Psychic Frog. I think that card is a little bit too good. All right, we are... Well, no, that was a really good matchup there. There was a lot of back and forth, and there's lots of stuff going on. So it wasn't like the Grief play pattern where one person doesn't get to play the game because they started with 2 cards missing from their hand. So we did have a real game of back and forth. So that is definitely a healthier play pattern than having Grief in the format. All right, let's go to the second round. Not a massive lover of this hand. We've got some solid protection in the Forces. This card might not be doing anything. And this card might not be doing anything. How much do I believe in the power of Undercity Sewers is the question. I'm going to try it. We're relatively well set up. We've got a couple of Surveils in. If you think of every Undercity Sewers as half a Ponder. So if we had a whole Ponder in this hand from this land and this land, that's probably worth keeping at that point. That's the logic I'm working out. This does not really do anything for us right now, does it? So in the bin you go. That does kind of telegraph what we're doing, but I'd rather telegraph what we're doing than draw that Reanimate at this point. Maybe our opponent cycles something and we get to Animate Dead because they're not expecting it. A Brazen Borrower. So we have double Force of Will available. And then hopefully we can Surveil into something else. Tamiyo. We're not a fan of playing against Tamiyo. What are we pitching here? Is it the Borrower? Is it the Atraxa? If we draw a Psychic Frog, then the Atraxa becomes very good. I think I'm going to get rid of the Borrower here. We could Animate Dead their own Tamiyo. We do also have to be aware that our opponent might be running... Oh, there we go. Absolutely rewarded for keeping the Tamiyo. Our opponent might be running some kind of Harbinger of the Seas plan. I will Force of Will to make this happen if I have to. I did not have to. Excellent. Okay. There's a Ponder. So I would love to draw a blue card so we can just Atraxa with Animate Dead backup. Sorry, Animate Dead the Atraxa with Force of Will backup. Alright, is our opponent some kind of Jeskai deck? Or straight up blue-white? Swords to Plowshares. Say no to this one. It's almost always worth defending your Psychic Frog. Card is just bananas. And immediately gets itself back in the running cards-wise. Because pitch a load of cards. Oh, look, we're drawing more cards. Like I 8 for 1 somebody's Psychic Frog the other day. And then I still lost. Because Psychic Frog too good. It drawn them a few cards and just gave them the stuff to pad it out. Anyway, moving on. I would like to have... Would I like to play another Psychic Frog into what is quite possibly a blue-white control deck? I don't think so. Like, we could be seeing a Supreme Verdict here. The downside here is if they play Harbinger of the Tides. Harbinger of the Seas, sorry. There is a Brainstorm. Not cracking the fetch yet, so they don't have additional plays just yet. Entomb. Alright, I think we're going to attack first. We might draw like a Force to protect what we're doing. A Dress Down. How do I feel about Dress Down here? It does stop me getting the Archon value immediately. Right, so we don't get to draw a card here. Now, because we have the follow-up here of the Animate Dead, I'm going to play the other Psychic Frog out now. Because we have something to do with our opponent Wraths. Brainstorm. Dress Down is curious. I wonder if this is some kind of Dreadnought deck. Certainly possible from what they're showing us. Right, they're cracking a bunch of stuff. So this could be Supreme Verdict. It is a Supreme Verdict. As expected. We have a pretty solid follow-up here. Let's cast Entomb. I don't believe we have to play around Daze, but I will still, just in case, we'll play it out. Let's get this Archon of Cruelty. Boom. We have another Animate Dead ready to go. Excellent. So we've got 2-turn clock. If they wrath this, then we Animate Dead it. If they plow it, then we don't get to bring it back because it's going to be in the exile zone. But we can bring back a Psychic Frog that we will have to pitch a card to in order to make it actually deal damage. But that's probably still worthwhile. Another Supreme Verdict. Okay. Well, the last one was good, so I imagine this one's going to be good as well. It's Archon. The reason I'm holding the Brainstorms here is because we get more cards in hand, so our Brainstorms become better after we've resolved our Archon. Our opponent's got one card in hand. I wouldn't mind taking that away from them. This Wasteland is obviously the worst card. Let's take your last card. What is it? A Narset. Get out of here. Alright, opponent's had enough. They know the top card of their library, so A-okay with me. What would I like in a matchup like this? This is probably one where we want to increase our threat load. So having just more guys, so our opponent has to try and answer them, feels like a reasonable plan. Daze is something that our opponent is probably going to be able to play around relatively well, and I'm not expecting all the graveyard stuff to be the most useful. I still keep some of it in, but we can take out the Animate Deads, and we just got Bowmasters and Barrowgoyfs. And that's pretty good. How useful is a Fatal Push? Our opponent definitely showed us more control-y stuff towards the end there. So I'm not expecting Dreadnoughts anymore, which means we want the Borrowers in because, guess what? They're threats as well as interaction. I think this is fine, and then we can change it up when we're on the play. And try and get these Dazes back in. But their big 4-mana Haymaker for the matchup, well, kind of a Haymaker in the Supreme Verdict, isn't one we get to interact with on the stack anyway. So there is that. What does this hand do? The Wastelands are pretty bad in this matchup. This is just going to be a very slow play Borrower. I think we can do better than this. I'll keep this. I'm going to get rid of the Barrowgoyf. We're on the draw. We can go get Surveil Land. We also have a Brainstorm. I think we're going to be fine making our second land drop. We've got the Force of Will to protect the Frog. Now, our opponent is going to play around Daze this game, unless we put them in a situation they really can't. But for the most part, they're just going to play around it. I think it's worth boarding them out. Because we get the value of having Dazes in our deck by not having them in our deck. Alright. So we've just kind of got all the things we want here. Let's just play this Polluted Delta out and pass a turn. Right, so we get our Surveil on here. We'll probably fetch a Swamp with the next one though. So that we at least have the ability to... I want a third land. I might want a third land, to be honest. We want to get Swamp so we can play around the Harbinger of the Tides here. If they have it. I doubt it, they do, but it's something we get to ignore. So if we play this Frog out, it's going to immediately eat a Plow. But that's probably fine. Right, we're just in. Here comes the Swords to Plowshares. We can decide if we're defending this in a moment. Oh wow, they didn't plow at end of turn, so they might have a Prismatic Ending to deal with it. Will I Force of Will this Prismatic Ending? 3 mana. Teferi Time Raveler. Well, I'm going to not let that happen. Or at least try not to let that happen. Right, so now we are very far ahead because we're drawing additional cards now. Wowzers Trousers, that's a good one, isn't it? Play this out so we get Surveil Land. We have a Bowmasters that we can play in response to something our opponent does. I don't want to just play it out now because if our opponent goes Supreme Verdict just to kill the Frog, then that's really bad for us. Whereas if they play a Teferi, we can flash it in response. If they cantrip, we can flash it in because that means they're not going to be Supreme Verdicting this turn. There's a mini 4th Eolingus. It is a 4th Eolingus. How many are they attacking with? None. That is interesting. Is this a spot where I flash in this Bowmasters? I think we Surveil first. Get the most information with what we're working with. Troll of Khazad-dum. That can go in the graveyard. Okay, now I don't want to play the Bowmasters. Because I'm going to do the Troll. This guy's Wasteland. It's so bad in this matchup. Like, if our opponent has to start on non-basics early on, then it can be good. But otherwise, it's just bad. Give me that Troll, please. Surgical Extraction. So we get a 1-for-1 exchange here. It's not the end of the world. Troll being not in our deck isn't that bad for us either. There is now the case of what we do with the Bowmasters. I think we play the Bowmasters out now. They want to Wrath with their human knight tokens, be my guest, I suppose. Because then they got nothing out of that 4th Eolingus, and then we've got a 2-for-1 or a 2 for 2, but then our Psychic Frog already drew some cards. Graph Digger's Cage. Sure. We're in frog gaming at this point. We had the option of removing the troll when we did the reanimate to our own frog, but I don't really want to draw any trolls, I don't think so. Let's Thoughtseize our opponent and see how good this turn cycle is going to be for us. Pretty good. I will discard a card to go the frog. I will jump the frog. So also by exiling the troll, it means that we wouldn't have been able to jump the frog to attack this turn. Okay, and then we just hold with where we are right now. Flooded Strand, that's the land we knew about. We're getting attacked by the knights. This does force us to put cards into the frog. But I don't mind putting cards into the frog. Up goes the frog. Did they draw a plow for turn? They did not. So we have lethal on board for next turn. With this one frog. If they wrath us, we just get to replay a frog. Mystic Confluence is probably a thing that they have access to in their deck. And Narset Pyro Veils. Alright, so we get to see what we're playing around here, which is always nice. It does shut down our frog draws, but our frogs have done the work. Well, our frog has done the work here. So we're trying to dodge white removal or cantrips. Alright, a cantrip. So they can crack the Brainstorm. They can crack the Flooded Strand. They can cast this Brainstorm, but we do have the Bowmasters in play. There we go. A Ponder. They would definitely cast a Ponder there, but the Brainstorm is obviously just killing them. So we are a clean 2-0. Let's go to round 3. Opener for round 3, Island Ponder Keep. That sounds like a good way to play Magic the Gathering. This time we can play with some basics without really damping our game plan down. The only way it kind of gets a little bit annoying is if we Ponder here and we see like Entomb Reanimate, because we won't be able to cast them both on the next turn. The Animate Dead is fine because we cycle the Troll. So I think we'll keep these and we'll pass. A Wooded Foothills. I've seen a few people jamming the red-green initiative deck lately. Could be that. Could just be a deck that wants red sources, like a painter deck with a splash. Simon Spirit Guide. Fable of the Mirror Breaker. Okay. So top card of our library is a Wasteland, which we definitely don't want now. So we want to play this fetch hand out. We could Brainstorm to dig a little bit deeper and try and get rid of this other fetch land. That seems fine to me. Before our opponent has all these red blasts all up in the place. Okay, so we're going to put back... If it is Painter, we're going to want a Wasteland at some point though. So maybe we bin off a Wasteland and Reanimate. And we can crack this on our opponent's turn. So we can go and get an Underground Sea and cycle, or we can get a Surveil land. It depends what we think we're doing with the rest of our mana. Alright, so they binned off a Mega for the Moon and a Once Upon a Time. Our opponent could be like red-green Painter, or they could be the red-green initiative deck that I mentioned. Ancient Tomb. We're going to see a big 4-drop. The Caves of Chaos Adventurer. I believe I'm going to cast a Brainstorm in response. We can hit Dazes and all sorts here. We don't have a way of putting this in the bin, which is sad. Because we can go and fetch the Surveil land, but then it'll be gone. So I guess we're probably going to be under the gun a bit life total wise. So put them like this, and then we'll cycle in the upkeep. Our opponent is certainly ahead here. 4-drop on turn 2 will do that to you. Let's get rid of this. We'll get the basic because we have seen the Megas of the Moon from our opponents. Oh, there's a Daze. We were close. So I think we play this out and we get back our Troll. It can trade with the Caves of Chaos Adventurer if that's what we want to do. And then we can reanimate their Caves of Chaos Adventurer. And that's probably the best use of our time. We'll see what our opponent's up to. Hopefully we can get a little bit of value out of this Daze, but we'll see. So they will trample over a little bit with this Caves of Chaos Adventurer. We don't get to fetch a basic if we take the initiative now. Alright. Let's offer this trade. 5-5 for a 7-5. We take 4 damage this turn. Hopefully our opponent doesn't have any scary follow-ups. Minsk and Boo. Post-combat Minsk and Boo of all things. I don't think we're beating that, are we? If you haven't played against Minsk and Boo, it's something, that's for sure. How are we supposed to beat this? We are drawing a random card. I guess if we can do our big reanimate nonsense, maybe that gets us somewhere. But we're going to take 5 from the trap unless we reanimate this Caves. Which will then probably also take 5. Because our opponent will get the initiative. It's tough. I imagine our deck is just full of red blasts out the sideboard as well. Oh, these cards don't really help, do they? So if we go get back the Caves of Chaos Adventurer, what is that going to do for us? Not a lot. We definitely don't need this land. Maybe we can double Daze to stabilize, but we need to get through this Minsk and Boo first before we can think about stabilizing. Do we get to Thoughtseize on this board? I don't think we do. If we ponder here, we're probably shuffling. I don't mind the Psychic Frog, but it's a bit late for that. I think we are trying to reanimate a big scary one. That's Caves of Chaos Adventurer. It's not great. So our opponent makes the Boo a 7, crashes through, and then we take 5, which is exactly lethal. If they copy the guy... I don't think we can win this one, actually. I'm not going to insult my opponent's intelligence. I think they're going to be able to win that one. So I would like this Orcish Bowmaster. It's very good against what our opponent's doing. Because making 2 bodies... So pinging them isn't great. But making 2 bodies so you can just take the initiative really easily is pretty gross. I like the Barrowgoyf. I like the removal spells here. Daze... Like, they are trying to make big 4-drops. But they have other stuff that gets around it as well. I like the Thoughtseize here. Our graveyard is probably not going to be a great zone for us to operate in. Take these Animate Deads. We can just Thoughtseize and take our opponent's guy. That's a nice way to really upset your opponent. Tamiyo might be a little slow. Ponders also feel a touch slow here. Am I wanting to trim down on some of this stuff? I think so. Gonna have a couple of Entombs. If we're getting rid of Entombs, we probably need to get rid of one of these. I think the Atraxa is probably the better one here because of the lifelink on it. Do I want this Brazen Borrower as a thing we can draw to? I think so. I feel like Tamiyo. It doesn't feel like a good matchup for Tamiyo, does it? Let's get another Borrower. Turn 2 Frog. Is turn 2 Frog on the play good enough? Our opponent's unlikely to make a... Well, I guess they could make like a Fable or something on turn 1. I doubt they're going to make a 4-drop because that's statistically unlikely. But the rest of this hand is kind of blank. We can just dump it all into the Frog. And that is probably good enough, right? This Wasteland will be switched on. Right, there's a lane on the Void, as expected. We do need to fetch basics here because of Blood Moon. So we fetch a basic island, then we can swamp cycle. Might as well do this now. Right, so playing on basics, so Blood Moon doesn't work anymore. Play Frog. Good luck killing this with red removal, opponent. Cavern of Souls. Yep. Naming human. How many spirit guides do they have? Force of Will. I guess we ponder first. Puts another card in the graveyard. Might be relevant. Don't really want all of these. I'm going to any order and shuffle here. Oh, actually, we're not putting cards in the graveyard because our Frog is not going to fly, is it? Just get rid of one card. Yeah, we are on the ground pound inside of the Frog world. Alright, opponent's had enough. Wasteland was good. Don't want to change how I sideboarded here. The Dazes get even worse on the draw. I think we'll bring in a Force of Negation and maybe a couple of Consigns. The reason for Consign is you can mess with the initiative and stop that being a thing, but is that good enough? We could just try and stop them making 4-drops with a couple of Dazes. Or we could have this Borrower. Just try and tempo our opponent. Alright, I don't mind that. Our opponent kept off the back of a ley line, I think. They didn't make a play on their first 2 turns. This hand has a pretty horrible play pattern that I'm looking to exploit, where we Thoughtseize away their best thing, and then we get their best thing with the Reanimate. And then we just kill all their guys. So we're probably getting a basic swamp off our Polluted Delta. Right, they mulliganed into the ley line. Hopefully that means they're not going to be playing anything particularly good on turn 1. Chrome Mox. If they see a Chalice here, that's pretty bad for us. Magus of the Moon, that's also pretty bad for us. That's a pretty bananas hand that our opponent had there. Yeah, we needed them to have like 1 turn delay on that, but they mulled ley line and still had a turn 1 Magus. They might have been mulling to turn 1 Magus, to be fair. But we've got 5 outs to this. Need to draw a Troll or a Swamp. Force of Will. With no blue card. Not great. Sometimes you do get non-gains from Magus of the Moon. I don't think we're supposed to play around our opponent having turn 1 Magus there. And just mulling to exactly Force of Will isn't really a good idea, because then our hand is likely to be very soft. If we draw a Troll or a Swamp, then our hand is genuinely very, very good here. And we got turns to do it. Sure, Swimming Spirit Guide. Doubling the clock. That's quite a substantive increase in damage. We've once again not found what we're looking for, so I'm going to play this land out so we don't have to go to discard. We don't have any big monsters to discard. We do have Force of Will up, so our opponent doesn't get to increase the clock any further. Yep, income accrue. We go to 8 here. Is it time? It's not time. We're going to be discarding a Thoughtseize. Do I care about Trinisphere? No. Don't think I do. Alright, this draw step has to be big. It wasn't big enough, and we die. Yep, a bit of a non-game there, but it's going to happen sometimes. Our opponent's hand. I think they were probably more likely to be mulling to this Magus, or, you know, maybe Magus or Leyline, but it's very unfortunate we didn't get a turn. Like, if we got one turn before this Magus comes down, this game is over. Because, like I said, we're going to fetch the swamp, and our hand was very strong. But that's going to happen sometimes. Alright, let's go to round 4. On the play, we got Island Ponder. We have Entomb Reanimate as well, with Force of Will backup. This just feels like a pretty strong way to approach this one. So we'll probably start out with just a Flooded Strand rather than the Ponder, and then we can just try and Entomb if that's going to be where we want to be on this matchup. A Mox Diamond. Okay. So we're looking at some sort of lands or lands adjacent strategy. Exploration. Do I care about exploration? Probably not. Another Mox Diamond. Life from the Loam. Getting back Dark Depths and Lush Portico. Does that really matter to me? I don't think it does. Well, we're trying to counterspell a crop rotation or something. Uro, that's a pretty good card. Let's crack this. Get Underground Sea. Cast an Entomb. We get the Archon of Cruelty here, because Caracas is just another way they can deal with threat there. Have this Archon in play. Should we draw and then we can ponder and brainstorm more effectively? I think I want to brainstorm this turn. We have a lot of brainstorms. I like the Wasteland, obviously. That one, the Animate Dead is unlikely to matter here, so that can go on the bottom, and then we just draw a land, because having lands is useful. So Dredging's Life from the Loam might not be quick enough to matter here. So we're going to see the Life from the Loam getting back the Wasteland. Yep, they can Wasteland us here. We'll bash here. Oh, we're supposed to cast Ponder first, aren't we? Whoop. Oh, we just do another Brainstorming. Bury this. Okay. This and this. They've already played our land for the turn, haven't we? So it doesn't really matter here. Alright. So if our opponent dredges the Life from the Loam, we counterspell it. And then our opponent doesn't have anything and they die to what's on board. Okay, they dredge the Life from the Loam. Nothing they have matters here. I guess they get an Uro, but we can just counter that. This will not gain them any life because we're counterspelling it. So they'll be dead to what we have on board. And then we get to go to game 2. So we don't really have much in the way of graveyard hate here. So what am I liking the looks of? Not huge amounts of things, if I'm perfectly honest. The Force of Negation is great, and the Borrowers are great. We have seen Elvish Reclaimers, so I'm inclined to keep these Failed Pushes in. Do I want Consign to Memory? Countering colorless spells, that's just going to be Moxes. Triggered abilities is a few, but I don't think we're trying to fight over our graveyard that way. So I think we just bury these Animate Deads on our sideboard. And then, how do I feel about Daze? Not great about Daze. I think we'll take those out. Is anything better than this one Daze? Is a Barrowgoyf better than a Daze? Is a Bowmasters better than a Daze? Is a one-of Consigned to Memory is like a nice thing we can have sometimes. I'll just take a Bowmasters. There's multiple bodies. Not big into the Thoughtseize either, but on the play, our opponent's probably just going to be able to ignore that as well. But being able to hit a crop rotation is kind of clutch. Tamiyo seems good here. The frog is great everywhere. Yeah, we'll go in like this, I think. Maybe take out... Actually, no, we'll take out these Thoughtseizes and add in some more Bowmasters. So Bowmasters is good against Sylvan Library, but it's also just multiple bodies, so it's good against the Maze of Ith, which is something that's traditionally good against a lot of the other stuff we're doing here. So we go wide a little bit, so we can force through more damage, whereas Barrowgoyf doesn't go as wide, because it's only one body. Not feeling great about this one. Our one mana source comes in and just begging to lose the Wasteland. Alright, we'll keep this. We don't require this. I guess we lose the Borrower here. I don't really want to cast the Ponder, but if we draw a blue card, then we can cast the Ponder. Elvish Reclaimer. Pretty good. Psychic Frog also pretty good. Would I rather have a Psychic Frog or a Ponder? I think we're just going to play the Swamp out and not play anything. So our opponent's just going to be activating their Reclaimer until they win the game here. which doesn't take a great deal of time, if I'm being perfectly honest. Here comes Frog. I think land strategies are relatively well positioned. They get hit a little bit by the combo decks that have been unlocked now that Grief isn't a thing. So that there's a few more combo decks floating around that can just like go underneath whatever lands is doing. But lands is very good into these sort of blue-black piles. Right, they're going for a slower approach with this Flagstones, rather than just racing towards Merit Lage combo. Source of Plowshares on our Frog. This is the thing we are doing, so we will protect our Frog. I would trade this for a Reclaimer. I will not trade it, but I would kill a Reclaimer. So we have to pitch all of these cards to do that though, right? Am I willing to do that to kill this Reclaimer? So now our opponent has to act. So we're going to sacrifice their Flagstones here and make their Reclaimer bigger. Get some Surveil action in. And now we see what they tutor for. A Wasteland. Alright, we're buying our ticket here and we're taking a ride. We're all in on the Frog. Bet it all on Frog. So they can take out any blue source. That seems like a given this turn. Oh no! That's probably bad news for us right there. Now we did mulligan to 5, so we had to take a relatively aggressive line. Like, we could have held on to these Entombs and tried to dig into a spell. We didn't have any way of digging into a spell that would work with the Entomb. And our opponent's very good against graveyards because they've got all this land shenanigans. Right, we have a Surveil land. Our opponent does have access to this Wasteland. Do I think I'm winning here? I don't think I'm winning. Let's not waste our time or our opponent's time. Do I like Daze more on the play? Probably not. I like Thoughtseize a little bit more, but I think the Borrower is just better still. I think it is still Bowmasters over Barrowgoyf. Maybe that's wrong. Should we try the Barrowgoyfs out instead of the Bowmasters? Like, it is a 3-mana spell as well against lands, which can be asking a bit much sometimes. But we'll see. Go, Gadget Frog. Okay. We have an answer to the Reclaimer this time. Or was it our opponent's turn to mulligan? If we find any reanimation spell, we're laughing as well. I'll play the Swamp out so that we can kill the Reclaimer and then play the Frog on turn 2. And we're playing on basics here. A Mox Diamond. Pretty good. No follow-up though. Gonna get myself an island. Get Frog. We'll pass it over. So we can discard this Atraxa. Will I discard this Atraxa? We have another Psychic Frog. Alright. Don't our opponent to get some value out of a sorcery speed Bajuka Bog if I can avoid it. Okay, I would love to find a land here. Let us play Frog and kill this. There we go. Let's push this and get another little Frog. So this Atraxa can also be a blue card for Force of Will or Force of Negation. Not that those cards are particularly good, but they can stop like clutch crop rotations down the line. Speaking of clutch crop rotations, here is one that we don't get to stop. It's going to be a Maze of Ith. It is. They had to make a decision what they were playing around. They obviously played into a Force of Negation, but played around us having more mana to work with. So we attack with the Frog, and they tap the Maze of Ith, and then we don't get to do anything. Okay. Right, they're getting a Hedge Maze at end of step, and they milled over a Life from the Loam. Pretty good for them. Yep, they're dredging the Life from the Loam. They've got a Wasteland, and the Ottawa is pretty good too. How are we actually winning this game? It's certainly slipping away from us second by second. I think we have to entomb an Archon of Cruelty here because that gets around a Maze of Ith. Obviously we can just play more creatures as well. Not always easy to do. This Wasteland gets us one draw step. I think that's acceptable. And we're getting crop rotated away. We are getting crop rotated away. They got another maze, or they're just going to go and get the Dark Depths here. I don't really know how we're supposed to come back from this. Okay, they're Bajuka Bogging us. Fine. Like, it's not great, but it is what it is. A Borrower. Okay. Maybe that does something at some point. If they go in on making a Merit Lage, we can try and bounce that, but they milled over the Tabernacle. They're going to start doing Tabernacle things. I think our opponent can lose this game. I'm going to scoop this one up. Yep, so that's 4 rounds in the book now, and we are currently 2-2. So let's go into the final round and see if we put a positive on the board. Alright, this hand seems fine. We've just reanimate Troll on turn 2 with Force of Will backup. Got a little bit of interaction from the Force of Will as well. Alright, we might not have any interaction from the Force of Will. There's a chance of the Void on 0. I think it's more important to get our Troll on board than it is to try and Wasteland here, because we need that Wasteland as an untapped source. Our opponent's already going to be doing some pretty gross things. They're evoking a Null Drifter. We can't counter that. Just crack this for an island, I guess. And we'll cycle this for a swamp. And we'll animate dead our opponent's Null Drifter. Don't mind if I do. We don't get to the 2 cards, but we have a body that grinds away our opponent's permanents, and I think that is better than the troll here. A Fleshraker. We had an option to counter this, but I'm going to try and remove it instead. The Herald's the End. Again, I'm going to try and remove that. We're just sort of holding out for like some of the Kozilek's command style cards. Thought Not Seer. Yeah, that was always a possibility, wasn't it? So, what do they take here? The Fatal Push, isn't it? And now we're slipping away. Maybe we take this game slower and hit the Cavern with the Wasteland and just rely on our Force of Will. Sure, we just counterspell the Fleshraker. Yep, I think we're going to pay for that. They're just going to sacrifice this Chalice, which doesn't do anything. So we've got Force of Will and Daze and Troll of Khazad-dum to cycle. If that's what we want to do. There's a Wasteland. We get to ignore that. What fresh monster is this going to be? Oh, this is such a big hit. Alright, we can Daze this now before they have the ability to interact with it. Because they weren't not going to have any tokens yet. I'm not sure how we're supposed to beat what's in front of us right now. Maybe we're supposed to go slower and rely on our Force of Will. Maybe we're supposed to reanimate our own troll. This reanimate doesn't feel great. Obviously, we are donezoed. Okay, so I like the reanimation package here because our own reanimate stuff is good and we can reanimate our opponent's stuff, which is also good. I would like some more removal spells, so let's bring in this Deluge, let's bring in these pushes. I like the Barrowgoyf as well, quite a bit here. Daze, not so much. Thoughtseize on the play, I don't mind. Don't like it on the draw, though. How big am I into Entomb? It's fine. Is this a Tamiyo matchup? It doesn't feel like a Tamiyo matchup. It feels like a pretty slow card here. And we'll board out something else that gets sucked up by a Chalice. And I think I'm okay with this. No. I think on that one, it's kind of bad. This card doesn't do anything on its own. This card doesn't do anything on its own. I think we have to mulligan again. This hand is cold to a Wasteland. I think we are, sadly, having to keep this one. Entomb is not very good. But we can pitch it to Frog, we can brainstorm it away. A Ponder. I am pleased to see you. Barrowgoyf and Underground Sea. Like, I want to hit more land drops, but I also don't want our opponent to have Eldrazi's. I think we hold it up so we can actually cast the 3 drops. This also means we can Wasteland and then Fatal Push something bigger. Because we don't have any counter magic, I'd rather hit like an Eye of Ugin. That allows them to cast multiple spells on a turn. It's a Fleshraker. It is a Fleshraker. Alright, here comes some more manas. If you could just play like some other stuff into this Toxic Deluge, that'd be lovely. No, you're not going to play anything else out. So I know there's a Barrowgoyf on top of our library. That is a sort of card that can take over this game. Am I using this Toxic Deluge right now? I think I am. It does cut our opponent off of mana in a roundabout fashion as well. Takes out the Eldrazi spawn. And if we can stick the Barrowgoyf, then we can start, you know, Fatal Pushing, getting in our lifelink damage, Wastelanding them, and everything should be winnable from that point. No play. Alright, Barrowgoyf. We need you to help us out here. It's only our opponent's graveyard that matters here. Because we have a leyline that was stuck under. Alright, so they got lots of lands in hand. That's what you're telling me. Which makes Wastelanding less appealing. It does grow our clock, though. I don't mind Brazen Borrowing here either, actually. If we Petty Theft away this leyline, we can Entomb for a big creature. And also start growing our friend. Right, we'll go for that. We getting dismembered? We are getting dismembered. Okay, so I don't need to fire off an Entomb now then. But we have it if we need it, and we've also got this Brazen Borrower hanging out. So our opponent's hand must be quite reactive. Like, they're not playing anything when they had a million mana over there. Well, they could have played 7 drops, and they didn't. A Glaring Fleshraker. Okay, they weren't sandbagging. Our Fatal Push doesn't kill this. What would I like to draw here? I'm trying to work out which reanimation target is the best here. It's probably the Archon of Cruelty. The card is just some beast right there. And our opponent's Graveyard Hate is almost certainly just going to be these ley lines. I don't think you can afford to run the ley lines and something else. Alright, I will reanimate this Archon of Cruelty because we drew that off the top. Boom. Goodbye Glaring Fleshraker and something from your hand. I'll play this Swamp out. Given the sheer amount of mana our opponent has, there's no point Wastelanding here unless we can Wasteland their Eye of Ugin. We can stop them recurring multiple threats. Just turn after turn that way. A Waste Escape Battle Mage. That's pretty good. Oh, some more mana is happening here. This looks like a kicked Sowing Mica Spawn. And there it is. Alright, so we've lost blue mana. Not great. But our opponent is hellbent now. A Thoughtseize. We can Thoughtseize ourselves and put this Archon of Cruelty in the bin. But I'm not sure how I feel about that one. Let me pass. What are we going to see from our opponent here? Something large. Can't fail push those. But we can fail push this little guy. That buys us another turn. More or less. Brainstorm we can't cast. Right, so the line here is Thoughtseize ourselves. Put this Archon in the bin. Draw a reanimate spell. Or draw specifically Animate Dead. Yeah, like the turn where we drew that swamp off of the Archon of Cruelty, if we'd have drawn an island and could have deployed the Brazen Borrower, we could have clocked this game. Alright, there's one card that works for us here. And you are not it. That is lights out. And that's the end of the league. So we finished with a very unimpressive 2-3 with what is probably the best deck in the format, or arguably one of the best decks in the format. So not a great run. But we did just get turn 1 bopped by a Mages of the Moon that just shut us out in one game. And the Eldrazi one, we were sort of relatively slim margins away from it going okay, and then it went not okay. So let's talk about this deck. So obviously the core of what we're doing here is perfectly fine, and there is some drawback to some of the things we're doing. So having Fatal Push in our deck. This is a card that is restricted to killing things of mana value 4 or less. Which means against some of the Eldrazi threats, if they're running the bigger Eldrazi, which you're seeing quite a lot now with the guy that we saw at the end there, whose name I've just forgotten, that stacks top of your deck, and then the Null-Drift as well, they're also running in their deck. Those get missed by a lot of the removal that people are playing to kill the Psychic Frogs of the world. So our Fatal Pushes, they're going to have targets. Our opponent's going to have some threats that they can play quite likely on counterplay that we won't be able to interact with. So we are very much under the gun to try and get things done there. And we didn't really do that. We could have gone and got the Atraxa instead of the Archon, the turn that we entombed, and maybe dug our way into some more bits and pieces. So maybe that would have been a stronger line. But I just wanted to keep that. I wanted to keep that Flesh Raker off the board, because if we played Atraxa that turn, our opponent gets to untap with a Flesh Raker in play and a bunch of cards, and they could just 100-0 us in that single turn. So I didn't really want to be lining myself up for that. Well, the lack of graveyard hate in the sideboard was really fascinating to me, because there are a lot of people doing, graveyard type stuff. So no Fairy Macabres, no Surgical Extractions, Hearses, anything of that ilk we just don't have access to. And it didn't really come back to bite us this league, but I could certainly see with other people playing similar decks to the one we're playing how that could. Tamiyo was fine here. Wasn't exceptional, but was fine. We did randomly get jammed up that one turn by Infect, but we managed to come back and do that because the power of Psychic Frog is too strong. I like having the Thoughtseize as a thing in our deck that we have access to, and sometimes, like we saw, we can actually just use it as an enabler. That's not really how you want to use it, but it is possible. Like, the deck is very solid. It does what it does, and the Loss of Grief has taken away one of the play patterns of the deck where you can just completely ruin what your opponent's doing on turn 1, which is, a very unpleasant play pattern. Whereas what we're doing here, I think it is a bit too good, even though, we may have not have got the amazing record here, but I think what we're doing here is ostensibly too good. But the play patterns against it don't feel as bad as Grief. Now, you can argue that when your opponent's beating you down with Psychic Frog and drawing extra cards, it doesn't feel bad, or it doesn't feel as bad as it actually is, because all that extra value is in their hand, whereas the Grief is the extra value is just your hands are just spilled everywhere. So there is a little bit of push and pull there. But yeah, you can certainly just continue playing this deck if you were playing it before and it feels good. I think I've seen an Esper build with a different sideboard plan where you get to have things like Triumph of St. Catherine and Source to Plowshares. I'm not sure how I feel about that build. That was a build a while ago with Rescaminator when it first came along, but maybe that's where you want to be now, because the plows are obviously very good into Eldrazi as well as Psychic Frog. And that's kind of like the two things that people are doing at the moment for the most part is Psychic Frog and Eldrazi. And there's a few people doing some green bits and pieces and other decks. Legacy's a diverse format. There's going to be lots of stuff happening at any given time, but the format very much hinges around Psychic Frog and Eldrazi right now. But yeah, I think that's it for this one. As much as things change, things kind of stay the same, I guess. I would be very surprised if we didn't see a ban for this, but we're going to have to wait until we get to the, December ban announcement, I think they said. So it's going to be after Eternal Weekend for people. But yeah, blue-black still top dog, I would say. Even though it didn't necessarily come together for us in this league. Alright, thank you so much for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe. It helps the channel out and it doesn't cost you anything. Alright, goodbye. If you'd like to support me in the channel, please check out my Patreon. It has a free guide to budget Turbodepths as well as 3 tiers of support. A low-cost one that enters you into my monthly raffle for a free donation deck on the channel, a mid-tier subscription that gives you access to my detailed Turbodepths guide that is updated every month as well as regular articles, and lastly the higher tier gives you all of the above as well as a monthly donation deck for my channel. If you're interested in supporting the channel this way, please check out the link in the description.